picture anyway, alright, about the urban garden. You are under the mistaken idea that I have something really, really important to say. I don't. I'm just full of manure, alright. And I'm not a scientist, I'm not a horticulturist, I never worked in the field. Yeah. I'm just a composter. In other words, I'm a bullshitter. Alright.
And food forest manager.
And what I did grow up in Malaya, and it's in the tropics. And I grew up in an orchard, and I followed the gardeners around as a young kid. And the funny thing is, and I know most tropical plants, alright. And the funny thing is, I never really went into horticulture, agriculture, or any of those things. By accident, I became a teacher. Alright. And like I said, I only knew tropical plants. It's only when I came here that I saw subtropical and temperate plants. And Anne and I were just talking about 2 days ago, and we discovered after looking at my age and when I came here that I've actually spent half my life over there until to date, touch wood, and the other half over here. That's a nice thing about us, those of us who are immigrants. We get to live two lives, if we only live in two countries. I have a method in my madness, alright? I need to ask you a few questions first, because it's important to what I'm going to say, alright? I'm going to talk about urban gardens, because in Auckland especially, we live in places with postage stamps size gardens, and you'll be lucky if you get 5 acres, and most of us work with very much less than that. So, how many of you have more than 5 acres in your garden, under cultivation? 1, 2, more than 5 acres, or 3. Alright, good. And we would expect them to be in the minority. Okay, the rest of us work with what we have. Secondly, when we talk urban gardens, it could be anything. How many of you have one devoted just to fruit trees? Look around, because afterwards we can talk about it. Nah, not you. How many of you have one just devoted to vegetables? I said just devoted. Yeah. And how many of you just in flowers and all the pretty, pretty plants? None. I'm shocked. Yeah, okay. Anyway, most of us work with a mixture of this and a mixture of that. Alright? And what I'm going to talk about is an urban garden, and what I think an urban garden should be. Because, like I said, I'm not an expert. What I can give you is what I think, what my ideas are, and as with most things I just saw, right, there's always a disagreement. There's always things that in the garden, and that happens. And some of you will be great gardeners, and everything you plant dies. All right, and there'll be some of you who plant everything wrong, and they all thrive. Okay, we said that's having a green thumb. I got a friend, she says, my thumb is brown. Okay. One of the first things I want to talk about is more general. Because like I said, I'm an accidental gardener. I just happen to like doing this and doing that. And I think I've killed more plants than most people. You only learn from your mistakes. And thank goodness, I think I made a lot of mistakes. Alright? I used to kill my plants and do everything wrong, everything right, and everything goes wrong. Until somebody said, I know what you're doing wrong. It's TLC. And I said, what? Thunder loving care. Too much fertilizer, too much this, too much that. So most of us live, work in a small quarter acre or less, maybe to get some food for ourselves, some vegetables, some fruit. We work with hand tools. We don't get to drive those big machines and go around. And we tend to it in our spare time, our leisure time. And that's quite important because there's always cost. And for a small garden, an urban garden, especially most of us, especially those of you who are working, the cost is time. All right? When you have all those fresh machines and everything, you save time. In a big plantation, in a big nursery, you have workers. Here, the worker is who you see in the mirror. So there's always that problem. And therefore, we have to look at time. We have to look at what you're willing to invest in your garden. And then there's one more problem. All right? And for that, we have to look at ourselves. The worst thing in our garden and the best thing could be you. All right? Because human beings are the most stubborn people. They are the most opinionated people in the world. All right? I've got this lovely plant. Where shall I put it? I think by the door. All right? By the main door. Everybody comes in, sees that plant. It's so lovely. And you plant it there. And the next thing is, it wilts and dies. When we get a plant, it's not looking at yourself, but where do I want you? To me, and Ed has caught me doing that before, I take the plant and I walk around. Right? In other words, I talk to my plant, say, where do you think you want to live? It's very important to know the conditions under which your plant wants to live. Auckland, as Derek Craig used to say, you can't grow anything from the desert to the tundra, right down to the equator. But in our own little plot, we have little microclimates, we have little soils, soil areas, but in Auckland mainly clay, unless it happened to be Mount Eden, Mount Roscoe, that area, Mount Albert. And as in the weekend we went to Piha, sandy soils, all right? But by and large, clay. So we live in places with different soils. Some parts of our garden are hot, some are dry, some are wet, all those little things. And when I get a plant, I normally, the first thing I do is, I look for the origin of the plant. Because most of our fruit plants don't come from here. They are exotic. All right? And so, you will see over there, there's who brought those down here? We have Japanese raisin. I've already taken the plant, so that's gone. We have Yamote and then we have the rest, even lemongrass from the tropics, and then you got temperate fruit trees. So different plants. And so we have to look into that very. Because of that, years ago, we went to visit this Swiss lady in South Auckland, and she's got, the photograph shows her plants on the slope. She uses everything, every part of it. And then there are like community gardens with rectangular beds. Each of us do it differently. And then again, we have fruit trees. So we have fruit trees, we have vegetable gardens, and there are different ways in which we do that. And I suppose one of the things I want to talk about is our differences, our individual ways of getting a successful outcome out of our soils. And back to it, you will be shocked. You know, every one of us is a little bit different. But by and large, if you go for garden visits, you see things, water retention, worm farms, composting, a little place for you to grow seeds. And some of you keep animals, right down from chooks to whatever. Alright? And maybe even bees. So it's a hodgepodge. And depending on your garden, on what you have and what you like, you may have a different combination of things. One of the things, and I do teach my class in gardening as well, and I always tell people, a fruit forest, a place where you have fruit trees and bushes and all that, is not the same as a vegetable garden. That's very important, because vegetables are annuals and biennials. They are single story, they're all quite low. They need bright sunlight. And they need care. Alright? They need care. And a lot of people love that. They love care. I'm a lazy guy. I hate vegetables. Alright. But you get, the more input you get, the more output. It's very rewarding. You know, you put something in water, put a bit of shit there, next thing you know, you got lots of leaves. So frequent input, frequent output. It's very different from a fruit forest, which is perennial. Alright? They may live for a long time. Some of those trees live for 100 over years. And that's totally different. And they could be multi-story, those of you who do permaculture. All the different layers, right down from 65-meter emergent tall trees, right down to what's on the ground and what's under the ground. So maybe up to 7 layers. You have emergence because you get bright sunlight, and then all the way down to the ground where it's almost totally shaded. And so they are different. There's a lot of difference there. And if you grow fruit trees, temperate fruit trees, you may only get one harvest a year. Right? Like you were just telling me, I only get tubers once a year. Yes, sorry. That's the way the ball bounces. But at the same time, input is very seasonal. Maybe fertilize 4 times a year, maybe prune once a year, and tend them maybe a little bit of fungicide, whatever you use. Alright? It depends on you again, whether you're on the lunatic fringe and totally green and clean, or you're on the other side, spray everything under the sun. Okay, that's your problem. So to me, a garden is an ecology. Those of you who are Facebook friends with me, and you see my development of my fruit forest, you see me take a lot of photographs of insects and things. Because if I can find a new insect, I go, yay, that's good. Even though they're bronze beetles and whatever. Alright? You get the good with the bad. And I just discovered last night looking at it, I belong to 62 Facebook gardening pages. That's madness. That's really mad. Okay? And one of the things that people ask is always, because we are all seduced by the supermarket, we expect every apple to be flawless and beautiful. I had a young pretty girl in one of my night classes, and she said, you know, what can I do to make it I said, you ever go to the mirror and have a good look at that pretty face? You may see 1 or 2 pimples. Alright? And if a young pretty thing can have those little flaws, why can't an apple? Alright? I'm sorry, I'm going to put it very rudely sometimes. But there it is. We are seduced by that. And then when somebody has got a lovely garden well taken care of, they see one little insect, they go, what can I do about it? You know? And then, well, I don't have an American accent, but here's an old folk song from the South in America. And the farmer says to the boll weevil, and he says, why you all come to my farm? And the boll weevil says to the farmer, gotta have a home, looking for a home. So you gotta eat, the insects gotta eat. If you've got food, the pests will come. And then you run to some organic pest control people and you say, give me those predator insects. I want them to eat the pest. You think that those predators are going to live if you get rid of all the pests? Alright? If you kill every human being on earth, you're not going to get COVID-19. There's nothing for them to live on. Alright? So, it's a question of trust too. If you convert to an organic garden, the first 2 years are going to be hell. Every insect under the sun is going to come. But then with that, any predator goes by and says, woohoo, food. That's when they'll come. So you have to have that ecology. You have to have the bad to have the good. And it's very hard to trust that.